Thanks for joining us. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Josiah Brown, who is Executive Director of Casa of Southern Connecticut.
Yes.
It's a child advocacy group. Mission statement is what?
Our aim is to find caring and consistent adults for kids who've experienced abuse or neglect. So we recruit volunteer advocates who work in the courts in collaboration with the judicial branch and with the Department of Children and Families to identify safe, permanent homes where children can thrive. So you have to make about a 2-year commitment as a volunteer, and you visit the child at least once a month, and in the process you're able to gather additional information, medical information, school information, and periodically make recommendations to the judge about what is in the best interest of the child.
Most of these kids in foster care?
There are some 4,000 children in foster care in Connecticut, and there's a large unmet need and a real opportunity there for volunteers to get involved. Only about 1% of those 4,000 children currently have these kinds of Casa advocates. So that's why the national organization, which is based in Seattle, recognized that unmet need and helped launch these 2 new organizations, Casa of Southern Connecticut for New Haven County and eventually Middlesex and New London County as well. And then we have a sister organization that is initially working out of the New Britain Court in the Hartford area, and that's called Casa of Northern Connecticut. And there is already Casa of Southwest Connecticut in Fairfield County in the Stamford Court.
Whose idea was it back when?
Yes.
To set Casa up so that there would be a voice for these children who really don't have a voice?
So this goes back about 4 decades. There was a judge in Seattle who saw this unmet need, initially it grew from Seattle, around the state of Washington, and then nationally. And of course, over the decades, there's been an increasing national awareness, a series of laws dating back to the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act of 1974, up through the fostering, the Family First Prevention Act that was just in 2018, an effort to really prevent children from entering the foster system in the first place, which should always be our aim. But it is part of a national movement, and Casa is in 49 states around the country. There are some 950 programs, including this new Casa of Southern Connecticut.
Is there more and more need for this, or is it lessening at all? What are you seeing over your experience?
Well, unfortunately, the opioid crisis has really had effects on children. Neglect is more common than abuse, and the opioid problem has fueled more cases of neglect, so that in the state of Connecticut there had been fewer than 4,000 children in foster care until recently, but has increased again over 4,000, largely correlated with the opioid crisis.
What types of volunteers are you looking for? Because this is hard work.
Yes.
This is the stuff that you look at and you just can't believe children are going through this. So who makes a really good volunteer?
Well, as I said, you have to be caring and consistent. You have to be able to make an 18 to 24-month commitment on average. That is typically the duration of one of these child welfare cases in Connecticut. Beyond that, you need to be a good listener, very patient, able to get along with people of all backgrounds, because you'll be going into foster homes, you'll be talking with social workers, with attorneys, teachers, and so on, and you need to be at least 21. But beyond that, we really welcome people of all ages. So our first cohort of volunteers range in age from 21 to 70. And I think that's a fairly representative sample, that we're getting interest from quite a few retirees, but also younger folks, graduate students who want to make a difference and also advance their own professional training, people who say are realtors or are self-employed in some other way, who have some flexibility in their schedule, and what you might call empty nesters, parents who would like to support other children now that their own children are out of the house.
Is it hard to find volunteers?
I think it's always a challenge. There was an excellent op-ed piece that I'll call out on the Connecticut Mirror website just the other day. The community action agencies in Connecticut were raising awareness about volunteer opportunities, and we work in concert with any number of other such organizations. So there are many ways one can volunteer, you know, tutoring, mentoring. It's wonderful if people become foster parents themselves or even adopt. And I would characterize this kind of commitment as somewhere in between. It is a very substantial commitment of time, but on a monthly basis, once you undergo the training, it's around 10 hours a month, and much of it can be according to the schedule needs of a given individual volunteer. So it's fairly flexible, with the exception of the occasional court hearing where we have to heed, you know, the direction of the judge. So.
As a volunteer, I would fall in love with all these kids and have to adopt them. Does that happen too?
Well, yeah, I should say that one distinctive aspect of the Casa volunteer role is that we are explicit at the beginning about the boundaries. Because it's meant to be a transitional role. You don't want to be one more example of an adult coming in and then going out of a child's life. And cycling through the foster system is such a risk. And having a Casa volunteer reduces those risks. Children are less likely to cycle through the foster system, and on average spend about 25% less time in foster care if they have a Casa volunteer. So in terms of the boundary, we try to make clear to everyone involved, the foster parents, the child, and others, that it's meant to be a temporary role, and we're trying to help the child, again, depending on the age, develop skills of self-advocacy. So the children could range in age from birth to 18, so obviously a huge range. There are, in some cases, if the child wishes and if the foster parents or adoptive parents or biological family, if the children wind up back home, which is, other things being equal, that's always what we would like. If everyone involved in the case would like the Casa volunteer to retain some connection to the child, then that can happen. So maybe the volunteer would attend sporting events and that kind of thing in order to show support and maintain some connection without meddling, you know, in the family. So you want to respect whatever the preference of the family may be.
All right, let's take a look at a video about what these advocates do.
Okay, great.
I am for the child who has been abused, the child who is afraid to go home,
who thinks it's her fault, who is forced to keep a secret or else.
I am for the child who has been neglected,
the child who does not know where his next meal is coming from,
who must fend for herself and her little sister.
Alone.
The child who has never been to a doctor or a dentist.
I am for the child who was taken away
for her own protection.
The child who is now in foster care, who does not know how long he'll be there,
or who these people are, or if she should trust them. I am for her.
The child who is in his third,
fourth, fifth,
sixth foster home this year.
The child who has attended 4 schools in 2 years.
Who sits in back of yet another class surrounded by strangers.
Believing in his heart that no one
cares. I'm for her. The child who has never been told
that he is loved.
That she is smart, beautiful,
talented,
worthy. That she is strong,
courageous.
That she is somebody. I am for her.
The child who one day will turn 18 and will be surrendered to the world.
I am for that child.
So I am there for that child.
To listen to her.
To speak for her.
To champion without compromise for what's in his best interest.
Because if I am
there for her, I know she will be half as likely to languish in foster care. And that much more likely to find a safe, permanent home.
She is the child I am for.
He is the child I am for.
They are the children I am for. She is the child I am for.
The child I am for is him.
Who am I?
Who am I?
Who am I?
I am a volunteer child advocate.
I am you.
Josiah, why do you do this kind of work?
I guess I feel privileged that I've grown up with two parents who emphasized education, gave me opportunities, and my wife and I are fortunate to have our two children, and I've always wanted to create opportunities for additional kids for a long time. I've been a volunteer in different capacities, and you and I met many years ago through volunteer roles with domestic violence services of Greater New Haven. So this is a cause, child welfare, that for years I've known something about. I'm not an expert on it. But when this opportunity arose to be the initial executive director of this Casa of Southern Connecticut, I was eager to take it on, and I think it's a great way to channel some of the people and organizations I've come to know in this region over the years, and work with colleagues, both professionals and volunteers. And I should also add that there's a new statewide association headed by Lauren Messner. She's working out of Hartford. So we have a series of levers that we can use to address the needs of these kids, and I'm looking forward to continuing to learn every day. You know, today I was in the court learning from the judges and the attorneys and the social workers, and the volunteers and I are doing this together, so it's you know, really inspiring.
How does a child learn to trust after all they've been through?
Again, Ann, I'm not an expert on child welfare, but all the research that I've seen is that every child needs at least one adult really on their side. So if that's not found in the family, it might be a teacher, it might be a coach, or it might be this kind of Casa volunteer or some other mentor that can help to inculcate that trust. And that's one reason that we're so clear at the beginning about that it's a limited commitment, that it is 2 years, because we don't want a bond to be formed that is then fractured, you know, at the end of the Casa relationship. But if we can develop those skills of self-advocacy, that will serve the child well in school, in the workplace, and so on. And I should add, there are some really stark statistics about the risks associated with foster care. Only about half of the kids in foster care end up graduating high school, and only about 3% graduate 4 years of college. So anything we can do to help improve the trajectory will certainly have educational benefits, as well as broader life benefits, of course.
And how are we doing as a state? When you line up all the Casas across the country, how are we doing here with this?
Well, the Casa in its current form really is new to Connecticut, so we have a long way to go to have the number of volunteers meeting the needs of these children. But overall, Connecticut's child welfare system, I think, is, in relation to other states, is in a strong position. There's been a lot of progress made, and it really is a collaborative approach involving the Office of the Child Advocate, for example, and any number of nonprofit organizations working with DCF and the courts. So, you know, we're a small piece of that, but we hope over time to have hundreds of volunteers in this region meeting the needs of hundreds of children. And go ahead.
And finally, what's your wish list? If you could, you know, as executive director, and I said you can have everything you want, what's on that list?
Well, I think ultimately it will be to have the number of volunteers to really serve initially all the children in the New Haven court, and then over time we're looking to grow to the Middletown court in Middlesex County. Also in New Haven County is Waterbury, and then also the Groton, New London area, New London County. So over time we'd like to have hundreds of volunteers able to meet those needs. And I should say that we're just in the process of adding board members. We have 5 new board members coming on here in Connecticut to over time replace the initial board of national staff for Casa.
And when did it come to Connecticut?
So it just received its 501c3 status last August, so it's very new. I was hired May 1st of last year. We got our website up just in time for Giving Tuesday, you know, around Thanksgiving. So it's still very new, but it's a great opportunity for people to get involved at this young stage of the organization. So.
Well, thank you for the work that you do for the children in the state of Connecticut, and we hopefully will get you a lot of volunteers. Okay. Josiah Brown, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Ann.
Appreciate it.
spend all night kissing, and if Walter's right here, then who else is missing? Got a little sidetracked if I'm so wishing to find the keys to the door, but it's also a metaphor. Things keep locked in the grocery store of my mind. Just to save time, skip right ahead to the nice ride.